Hello! Welcome to a new episode of the Game Audio Hour, and a fortnightly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here is where you'll find in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. So going around from the top left, it's Alex.
Hello, I'm on the top left today. Am I? I have no. I had no say in that.
How's the top left feeling?
It's feeling quite high up here. Actually, I'm not quite sure who's below me today, but it's feeling good. How are you on the? I should look like that. Shouldn't it's like a Brady Bunch thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Right below you is actually Mad Bard Mike, good old Michael Shapiro. How are you doing?
Oh, that was my segue. I'm doing great. All things considered, composers can still work even if the rest of the world is temporarily shut down. So that's what's going on here.
Excellent. And right next to you, of course, is Chase. Hello down there.
Oh, yeah. Hello. Somewhere in the virtual world, I'm doing well. It was raining today, and then it decided to stop, and I am now sad. Temporarily.
Are you only happy when it rains?
Yeah, I get a different type of compositional mood when it rains rather than it being sunny all the time.
Yeah.
That went right over his head, didn't
it? No, it's cool. I feel you on that, though. Like, since the rain is so rare in SoCal, it definitely has an impact on you when it happens. So, yeah. Anyways, we got a show, so let's get right into it. There's all sorts of stuff that's been happening in the game audio world, but probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed is actually just how many companies are jumping on this. We alluded to this a little bit in our last episode, but there's a bunch of companies that are saying, hey, we want to give you stuff. And sometimes giving stuff means stuff for free. Like Moog actually made some of their apps available on iOS for free. You can get a Moog synthesizer there. A couple of other companies giving free libraries or free apps, free utilities. But there's also a whole bunch of discounts that are available to us working sound designers and composers. I've been really, really trying to resist the urge to purchase some of these things because they look really good and the discounts are really deep. But I kind of want to throw it to you guys. Have you taken advantage of any of these discounts yet?
Today, I impulse bought the latest thing that 8DO is selling. I think it was like a Auraphone, some kind of bell instrument. All it took was, an $18 price tag and 10 minutes of trolls being really excited in a video that kind of pushed me over the edge. To be fair, it is the kind of sound that I do like using. I'm kind of a sucker for idiophones, is that the term? Metal percussion, and anything that sounds decent kind of calls to me. But yes, it really was like buying gum at the checkout line at the supermarket. It was like, oh, that's so cheap, and it's right there. So that was my impulse buy of the day.
Oh man, I'm looking at that right now. I haven't checked out 8DO in a couple days, so now I'm seeing all the stuff, including that $18 deep sampled Aluphone. Hey, that's... Oh wow, it's $18.
One.
It's $18.
That's the one. That's the exact thing that got me today. It is worth noting that 8DO, which is no stranger to discounts generally, seems to be featuring a lot of pretty deep ones now. So if you're into their stuff, this is as good a time as any to browse. Some other discounts, institutional discounts I noticed. East West is doing a pretty hefty cut on almost everything. I think Cinesamples, whose praises we have sung on the show before, has a number of discounts. If you've always wanted to get that Tina Guo legato cello, it's a commonly heard sound, but a beautiful one. That one is half off. Where I'm at least a fan of Cinesamples, Winds and Brass, those being the two that are in my own library. What else? Plugin Alliance. Not a day goes by when it seems that Plugin Alliance is not offering some head-scratching discount, but They offer discounts upon discounts, which I think is really interesting. They'll have like a site-wide massive sale, and usually discounts that are site-wide will be accompanied by some message to the effect of, hey, you can't use coupons. We're already selling everything at a discount. Obviously, you can't use not for Plugin Alliance. They will be like, on top of our massive discount, here's a coupon just for you. So you can actually really get some close to free purchases from Plugin Alliance, which is surprising given the high quality of a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I was really pleasantly surprised when I saw not just the monthly voucher at the beginning of the month from Plugin Alliance, but also another voucher that coincided with the start of the mega sale. So if you haven't checked your email, maybe you're a Plugin Alliance user already, go ahead and check if you got an additional voucher that you can use on this mega sale, which I think ends tomorrow. And they got some very good stuff on sale. That black box HG2 plugin, which we're all big fans of. It's really good. But in addition, a lot of other things like the BX Digital EQ is kind of my go-to EQ. Just really, really good to use. You can do some really precise stuff with it. But yeah, so much stuff there. I have taken advantage of it already just to add another plugin to my toolkit from Plugin Alliance. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that is out there that I haven't taken advantage of? You've listed off a couple of companies there, Mike, but is there anything else that Alex or Chase that you remember seeing that's worth mentioning?
Yes, as if Reaper wasn't cheap enough or generous enough with its trial to begin with, I think right now, currently, the Reaper trial has been extended to like 90 days or something like that.
Oh, man.
It's actually, if you just go to their website, it's right at the top. If you're working remotely and or social distancing and would like to use Reaper at home, you can download a temporary Reaper license. So actually, it's not a trial. It's a full-blown Reaper license that you can download for free during this current period of uncertainty around the world. Reaper itself, like if you bought a license, it's what is it? Like it's very affordable if you're a small income, like an independent composer or sound designer. But even if not, the trial of Reaper is sort of old-fashioned shareware, which is fantastic, which means that it does nag you to buy a license, but the actual trial period is indefinite. So this current offer is kind of a little bit extra on top of something that's already fantastic. But yeah, if you were thinking about trying out Reaper, then now might be a good time.
Reaper. You're going to do it, right, Chase? Yeah? Going to jump on the Reaper bandwagon with us?
No, but I have been pushing my parents to do Reaper. My dad does voice acting, and so does my mom. And my dad has a podcast show. It's called Smooth Jazz Cafe on WSD Radio on Sundays. And so I taught him the basics of Reaper, even though I don't know it that much. But they say when you know a DAW, you know everything else. He doesn't know any DAW, so it's easy for me to teach him of the basics of what just how to get around. And I did it in like 10 minutes, and then answered his questions along the way. And then I'm getting my mom started once she's up and running with her new sound card, because my old one that I sent her doesn't work. But no, I'm not on that Reaper train, but my parents are, so you're good.
Wait a minute. Both your parents are voice artists, and you've never brought this up until now.
Nobody asked.
Oh my gosh.
How long have you been on the show?
This is wow, mind blown. Huge secrets revealed.
Chase, I want you to keep a running estimate of how interesting the show is at any given time, like a little graph in your head. And if it ever drops below a certain level, as it is wont to do, I want you to say, hey, why don't we talk about my folks? Isn't this incredibly cool? Okay.
I think I'm just going to start a list right now, ready for next episode of like every question ever about Chase, and just ask them all in next episode.
I'm speechless.
Oh,
So come on, give us a quick plug for your parents. Do they do game voiceover work as well, or film or television or what?
So actually, my mom is the artist in the family. She is the singer, songwriter, dancer, actress for. She's been in some major films and such. And my dad only does it as a hobby, but he won a contest in like early 2000s on a really big radio show in Chicago. And since then he made connections with the industry, and then that person left, and then now he got asked to be back on this type of radio show, and he's been doing it for a little over the month. So my mom has been doing, she's got a couple successful audiobooks, and then my dad, he's just got his podcast that just pretty much like lifted off like sometime around the Super Bowl. So yeah, my mom does audiobook stuff, work, and everything else. But I'm trying to get my mom into games, and we're working on a little project together.
I don't think we want that kind of competition. Your parents sound pretty accomplished.
No, you want that competition. You want to hire them for your next voiceover stuff, like for things. Trust me. You want. This is good stuff. I usually do their voiceover demos. Like I did my mom's voiceover demo, and I hacked together a McDonald's spot. This is when I was just starting. That was like 10 years ago, and the spot did so well years later that she ended up getting the actual McDonald's spot nationally.
Damn.
Wow. So I was
Here's
just
the plug.
distracted there by Vince's telephone. Was that your telephone?
I'm
it's
sorry.
somebody's
Yeah, someone's at the door. It's okay. If
Okay.
it's not that, the dogs are going to let me know full well that someone's at the door, but that's okay. Someone will open it. Someone will take care of it. We can just keep on talking about all sorts of cool stuff. Oh, one thing that did come to mind also is Waves is doing their huge discounts right now as well. So if you're in need of some, bread and butter type stuff, whether it be individual or in big bundles, both of those sorts are available for very big discounts. So I'm just looking at their website. API collection, regularly $600, now with coupon $70. The platinum bundle is $220 instead of $2,000. Chris Lord Algae series, signature series, $60. So they're doing big 80, 90% discounts on Waves at the moment, which is really, really nice because they make good stuff. So yeah, that's definitely something I wanted to mention there before we move off this topic of discounts. Anything else that I'm possibly missing here?
That's a general caution. Of course, please purchase plugins responsibly. Many of us are trapped at home, and maybe there's some anxiety in the air, and impulse buying can be a way to seemingly overcome anxiety. Buy the plugins that you need or you think you might have some use, and it never hurts to use the free trial to make sure that you need it, even though it's not as much fun as buying something on sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Very well said. I will say,
unless we're talking about BX Opto by Plugin Alliance, in which case you should just buy it anyway because it's fantastic.
Honestly, BX Opto's great. BX Digital's great.
Yeah.
No, seriously. So even with all these discounts that are happening in the air, I have purchased. I've purchased two things. I've already mentioned that I did something from Plugin Alliance, but oh yeah, and the other one was just sort of an upgrade for an existing product. It's like, okay, that's cool. I feel like I've been purchasing stuff responsibly. I mean, one of the worst things is that you just load up your toolkit and then you don't know what you're actually going to go to once you're working, right?
Yeah, that's the danger that we all face. Actually, I definitely have that problem, and I think we talk about this quite a lot. Way too many compressors and EQ plugins and reverbs and delays and just stuff that definitely be beneficial to just learn one, use one, learn one, get to the bottom of one, and then move on to something else. For me, that one also is actually BX Digital. That's one that I've thoroughly learned because I thought it would be a better idea to do that. And then I bought FabFilter Pro Q3. And now I actually find FabFilter Pro Q3, which is arguably more intuitive and easier to use than BX Digital, harder because BX Digital has a certain kind of workflow that you sort of get used to. So there's definitely something to be said for not buying anything and just learning the things that you have already. Except for BX Opto.
Chase, what was up
Which
there?
Oh, I was in concurrence with Alex because I haven't bought anything. I'm still learning. I was just in the DAW today and was reading about, I got Soft Knob, the saturator, for free off SoftTube, but that was because it was part of their free thing and I needed a saturator. But then I remembered that I had a saturator and I couldn't find it in the plugin list, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I needed this like 2 days ago. But SoftTube is still good.
While we're on this, before we get off this plugins wagon, since we were talking about learning things, I'm kind of wondering, is there anything in particular that you're trying to learn or you're trying to put in some effort into using and utilizing, perhaps because you've already purchased something and you realize that you've underutilized it?
Excellent question.
Well,
Yes.
Isotope is committed to changing the interface of Ozone every 30 to 60 days at this point. So it's a never-ending learning process, and I don't mean that in a good way. There's really just futzing with the interface continually. But less jokingly, I do try to always. It's such a rich suite of tools that I try to spend some time just figuring out what Ozone can do, rather than constantly seeking third-party alternatives. Because it's exactly what you're saying. That's stuff I'm sitting on top of that I should learn as well as I can.
Yeah.
For me, it's the Plugin Alliance BX consoles. I have 2 of them, no, 3, I guess. I have the Neve one and the SSL G Series one, and the Neve. It's by Lindell Audio, but it's a collection of a whole bunch of Neve stuff, 1176 and 1073 and stuff like that, I guess. Anyway, those ones as well. They all sound quite different. And they, like at the SSLG bus channel, it sounds like that. Apparently, I don't know, I've never had the privilege of actually using a real one before. But because they sound slightly different, you get the sense when you use them just once that, wow, this would be really, really useful in certain situations. So in order to actually reap the best benefit from owning these, you'd need to use one a whole lot so that you can find the things that it does better than, say, the N series or the Lindell version, or, I think there's also the SSL E series one as well. So for me, yeah, those are the ones that, but because they're channel strips, there's a lot to sort of grasp there in terms of the function, not the functionality, but in terms of the sound. You've got the compressor, you've got the gate, you've got the expander, you've got the EQ, the filters, the saturation, all of that stuff. You'd really have to use a lot to learn, in order to sort of differentiate between the different models that they have. So, yeah, that would be my the series at the moment. I'm trying to learn better.
Yeah, I kind of want to hop off that because hop onto that because I'm also doing a similar thing. I've had the BX console N for a while and I like it, but I realized that I've mostly just used it as, oh, hey, it's a good channel strip. And so recently I've been messing around with putting that into a larger template, seeing if I could actually turn this into what Plugin Alliance themselves actually suggests. Hey, you want to make a whole console worth of these channel strips? Well, you can. So I'm exploring some of the more detail-oriented stuff that goes along with that. Messing around with things like how much total harmonic distortion is here, and how exactly do you manage doing these individually modeled channels, and messing around with that. And thinking about how the noise actually builds up when you're dealing with that many channels, which is totally possible to do. When you're working on that scale, it's possible to make something that's actually kind of a mess to deal with. So I'm relearning this channel strip in this particular paradigm now. But it's actually been really fun re-exploring this thing.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'd say for me, it's more of convolution reverbs, and algorithmic reverbs. So I struggle with that quite a bit in terms of just getting the right space together. So I've just been kind of playing around with impulse responses and some of the things like Waves had this Convolution XT that I thought was good, but then the trial ended. So I was debating if I need to buy that or not, or use something native within Cubase, which is Revelation or Reverence, and then importing the impulse responses that I have, and then messing around with the Vienna convolution reverb. They have a hybrid one, and then they have like a standard one, and just trying to figure out like what they all do and how many are needed and things like that. So it's been kind of a challenge, but I'm learning quite a bit.
Man, reverbs are fun. Also, I feel like reverbs are kind of hard to learn just because there's so much to it. Like, you have to spend a lot of time just listening and thinking about it and ruminating and letting the sound marinate in your mind for a bit. Ooh.
One thing I find very handy is if you solo the reverb channel and just listen to the wet sound, and then you can compare different settings, or if you've got like a convolution library like Spaces, you can compare one convolution to another, just by listening to what it's doing. You can say, oh, this one's really bright, or this one's kind of mellow and harsh. I don't know, that I found that useful.
It's a good tip. Thank you.
Cool. So we've talked a lot about plugins right now. Maybe we should talk a little bit about some fun game news that's been happening recently. A couple weeks ago, Mark Cerny over at Sony made a presentation that was ostensibly to be his game development conference presentation on the PlayStation 5 architecture. Now, a lot of people out in public latched onto this, and they went on YouTube and checked this out, and most of them blasted it for being really dry and boring, because it's not your typical sort of game development presentation like you would see at something like E3, something that's more consumer-oriented. But I actually thought that the presentation was pretty cool, and he spent a decent amount of time talking about audio during the presentation. Actually, did any of you guys check this out while it was happening?
Yeah, I did. I caught it the day after, actually, but I did watch the entire thing.
Yeah, it was fun watching those little stencils of people moving around. You're like, nice idea.
Mystery Science Theater.
Very Mystery
3000.
Science Theater. It's hilarious. But he talked a lot about audio towards the end, which I was really pleasantly surprised to see and hear. Probably.
Can you summarize? Can you summarize the feature set for the PS5 and audio?
Oh yeah. So you can't really say anything too specific about it because he was definitely describing things in very broad strokes. But the big takeaways are, one, that the PlayStation 5 is going to be an audio powerhouse, especially when it comes to 3D mixing and positioning. And part of it is going to be HRTFs. And he was describing a lot of things, again, in very broad strokes, but suggesting ideas like, hey, there's going to be HRTFs that are going to be processed in consoles, and it's also going to possibly support custom HRTFs for individual users. And he talked about his own personal use case and what it would take in order to make that happen for the PlayStation 5. The name of this whole audio subsystem is this thing called Tempest, which definitely made me think about the old Atari game Tempest and the arcade, because vectors are always fun. But I imagine that it was also used just because of this idea of really suggesting the game happening all around you. And of course, in Tempest, the gameplay happens in this sort of polygonal but also circular sort of game space. And you have to constantly be aware of things that are close to you and far away from you. And Mark was making mention of the idea of being able to really pinpoint individual things that are happening in the sound space. Oh, I know that thing is happening right there. And, oh, there's a sound that's happening there and there behind me. And that's actually kind of exciting. He really sort of pushed this idea. And perhaps suggested that this is going to be a new space for game development potential and possibility that developers are going to explore. And
But did the PS4 has always had its own like ambisonic capabilities, because I can remember doing that for when we were working on the PSVR game way back. How does it differ? Is this now done? Is it like baked into the hardware and it's done far more efficiently or something? Or like how does it differ with what the PS4 can do?
Well, they were saying that this is more of like a long-term journey type of thing from just getting started. So they were kind of comparing, saying that the PS3 had that audio powerhouse thing, and then they kind of like didn't pay that much attention to it with the PS4. It could do what it was, but in terms of things being baked in, like yes, they're like Vince was saying, it's nothing super concrete, but they're discussing the fact or matters of it being part of the actual console to do more and more for the iterations further down the line. Like they're talking about 10 years further. And the thing that excited me most is thinking exactly what he understands what audio is to other people is that, number one, it's subjective. How you hear something is not how I would hear something. And so they're talking about having like models of things shaping your actual ear to have a different HRTF perspective so that the game is customized to your hearing capabilities and candies as well. So it was super great. That was something exciting.
He actually mentioned
Yeah,
the PS4 a bit, and he also mentioned it specifically in the context of coming from the PS3. So the PS3 had that very notorious cell architecture, and a lot of people thought that was very frustrating to deal with when it came to general compute. And Mark actually noted that because of that particular architecture, that it was actually very much aligned with audio processing needs, specifically things having to do with positioning and spatiality and convolution and stuff like that. Now, moving from PS3 to PS4, PlayStation 4 is a much more traditional type of compute architecture compared to the PS3. And Mark also noted that, relatively speaking, the PS4 actually wasn't as powerful when it came to audio processing compared to the PS3, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about because of, just because of the difference in generations, as well as thinking about how different generations of gaming hardware have treated audio in different ways. Like the original Xbox One, not the Xbox One of now, but the Xbox One of 2001, they almost legendarily had that dedicated media control processor for dealing with audio. And then from Xbox, they went to Xbox 360, and then I remember developers being sort of all up in arms. Hey, we had this audio capability for free, and now we've got to share it with the general processing power of the Xbox 360. And it's kind of a similar thing happening with PS3 to PS4, except it really wasn't so much a place for the power. It was actually more of an architectural model thing, where, cell architecture actually is very much oriented towards the needs of audio. And then PS4, not so much. But now we go to PS5, and they're talking about how there's an architectural shift, again, that moves towards being favorable towards audio processing. And that will allow us to do things like massive audio mixes with 3D positioning on all sorts of things. And that got me thinking about a couple of things that I want to present to you for a bit. One, he talks about HRTF, and I wonder if this, alongside other things that are happening in the general gaming zeitgeist, things like game streaming and people having their own personal games in Switches, I wonder if headphones are going to be the standard for games moving into the future. I mean, the PlayStation 4 has a controller which has an audio output on it. What if the PlayStation 5 is basically a PS4, except it's got even better audio streaming and maybe even more power for that line amp in order to deliver super high quality audio for individuals who are using their particular controllers? And then the second thing that I'm thinking about is actually related a little bit to development. When we're talking about game hardware architecture, a lot of it actually has to do with what's oriented towards making the game possible. So we've got all this audio type of power, this audio biased architecture, which is actually kind of similar to what is going on in the video world with ray tracing. And legendarily, there have been very few audio applications and plugins and utilities that take advantage of the huge amount of power that desktops have in their video cards. There have been a few little experiments here and there. Hey, let's try to make a convolution reverb that actually runs on compute shaders on my NVIDIA card. But I wonder if actually there might be a little bit more development there in the future.
Whew, that's a lot to unpack.
Sorry, I just sort of like. I can't.
Just that first the first topic that you raised, that's a very interesting one, because the idea that potentially the default way to consume a PS5 game will be with headphones versus like TV speakers. That's a really interesting one. I'm not sure that I mean, when you think at the moment, I guess the default way that to consume a PC game for most people is headphones. So then going over to console, the big difference, of course, is that if you think of the context of where a console generally is, it's generally in a living room, generally plugged into a television, which generally means that you're going to be viewing it from a much further distance away, generally, than, you know, sort of half a meter to a meter. What is that? 17 imperial tons, or something like that, from your face, like you would with a PC. You know, if your living room TV is much further away, it also means then that sort of group viewing or playing games in a group of people becomes much more comfortable and easy when you're dealing with a console versus with a PC. So all of that seems to indicate that there's a difficult sort of there's a difficult obstacle there for them to deal with, because yes, you can have people plug your gaming headphones into your controller, but then, you know, what about if you want to have if you're playing a game with a bunch of friends, or you want to have come and call somebody to come and have a look at what you're doing, and now, just here, put these headphones on so you can hear as well. It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that.
Yeah, I agree. That the default in the living room, I generally don't want to wear headphones if I'm experiencing something, whether it be a movie or a game, on my big screen TV. But, you know, he really does spend an awful long time talking about HRTF, and that is something that does not benefit a loudspeaker living room type of audio situation. So
that's right.
It does make me wonder if maybe this is something that they're going to push towards.
Perhaps they're just going to say that. Oh, go ahead. Oh,
I was just going to say, I personally enjoy, even when on a console, using headphones, because I appreciate the ambient audio much more, because, you know, we're aware of more detail in the audio. So like all the sound design, and this may be a reflection of the games I tend to play, which have often natural settings. So there's wind and there's trees and the rustling and all that. But I at least would be very interested if there's more thinking of headphones as the default, because it would encourage that attention to detail. And in music as well, I think we would benefit, because then we could play the quality card a little more often if we knew that. It's like the transition from stage to screen, you know, where if you have an opera singer, they're distantly visible to someone in the back row and possibly distantly audible, but in a film you have ultra close-ups, so suddenly you care about the nuances of performance, and that's why, you know, TV acting and film acting sometimes seems much more detail-oriented than its stage precursors. So likewise, if we are proponents for audio quality, the movement towards a medium where people can perceive that quality much more easily does benefit us. That was much longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I suppose that the only way to sort of resolve it is to say that we have all of these extra features for you if you plug your headphones in, that is the way to get the premium experience out of your PS5 game. However, it's perfectly enjoyable on your surround setup or on your television in straight stereo. But if you want to get the full experience, then use this special device to measure your head and calculate your own HRTF so that you can get the best possible experience.
You know, you do make a good point there, Alex. Sony is kind of known for their proprietary things. And I used to be a fan of their Sony headphones that they had that was first released with the PS3, those $100 headphones. And then they make a different iteration for the PS4 one. So I still think they'll give people options, as they always have. But I do think if you want the premium experience, they'll probably be making another pair of those type of headphones, which model your ear, and then you can send them in and then get them back and they'll be custom. That's what I think.
Maybe that's the PS5's new PSVR is actually going to have some kind of thing in here that measures your head and your ears when you put it on. So there you go.
That might be the case.
Buy the PSVR.
I think that's really possible. Maybe they're working out the kinks right now. There's so much cool stuff that is possible in this headphone audio world. In any case, I'm just super happy to hear that Sony is paying attention and really wants to push forward on this particular space in gaming. And I'm really looking forward to what sorts of games might really take advantage of it. Just in the consumer space, in the places like IGN and Verge and whatnot, you've got those people positing all sorts of different game designs and ideas for, oh wait, we could do this, and I think that's going to also have some influence on what game developers are going to want to aspire for and try to do in future game designs. So I'm really looking forward to it.
When is the PS5 coming out?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, there was hope that it would come this year. Of course, with the current global situation, there are issues when it comes to consumer readiness and manufacturing pipeline and all that. But my understanding was that if everything was going according to plan, that it would happen this year at some point. So, but we'll see. Everything is kind of up in the air at the moment.
So we have just to slide in a topic change right here, because we have a question from one of our viewers who's watching right now. Fane, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. Thanks for tuning in. The question is, first time I catch you guys live, so I'll take a full advantage and go off topic. That's okay, because we're going off topic with you. What would your main argument be to an indie developer working on a small 3D game with a small budget for using Fmod? Oh boy, I have strong views about this. So maybe somebody else should go first before I flip over tables and punch walls and stuff like that.
Sure. I'll make it quick. And then everybody else can chime in. I'll make it quick. So what I would suggest is to do a demo and then video the demo and present it to them in terms of how it can accentuate and bring sound identity to their game. And typically that most of the time works, at least for the indie developer. And when it comes down to budgeting, I believe, and guys correct me if I'm wrong, it's free up to a certain amount of assets. Is that correct?
Well,
I think it's on the website.
I'm actually looking at it right now, and it is free. I don't think that number of assets are an issue. I do remember on the Wise front that a number of assets is a particular limit. But for in Fmod world, if the game development budget is under 500,000, it is free for use.
But you have to have the Fmod logo in it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I might be misunderstanding the question. I think, Chase, you've answered the question. How would you convince an indie developer to use Fmod? I think the question it might be asking, why would you bother using Fmod if it's a small game with a small budget? Why not just use Unity Audio or Unreal Audio? What would be the benefit of using Fmod, I think? So we're going to tackle both, I guess. So Chase has tackled that question of how would you convince somebody to to add the budget for something like that for the project. I will now, as emotional with as little emotion as possible, take on the issue of why would you bother using audio media middleware in a small project, if that is actually the question.
I can see the lack of emotion on your face there.
No.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Okay, so no, I can't do it. Okay, so basically, this counts for Wise or Fmod. It doesn't matter. I mean, the question here is audio middleware. Like, why would you bother? Fmod and Wise, they do have, if you have a very, very small budget, indeed they do have tiers of their pricing where you can use them for either very, very affordable amounts of money or no money, provided that there are certain criteria that are met. Like in the case of Wise, it's less than 200 assets, I think, is the free limited commercial license. But when you...
Sounds about right.
Yeah, but actually it's something like $750, I think, at the very, very low tier. So it's very affordable. And Fmod, I think you need to have the Fmod logo that's shown on startup. And then less anyway. The question is, why would you bother using middleware at all? Okay, so many reasons. So many reasons. There's capability. Of course, capability is the big one. The amount that you can do with Fmod, Wise, or any of the middleware packages over what you can do with Unity Audio or Unreal Audio is incomparable. I mean, there's so much more that you can do, so much easier. But I'm going to actually take it from a different angle, because this is something that I recently experienced on a project that I worked on recently. That project used Unity Audio for the whole thing, and it was a mid-sized, quite an ambitious scaled game. The beyond functionality was a big roadblock all the time. That in the case of Unity Audio, yes, it can be made to do the things that you want it to do, but everything requires time from a programmer. So if you are the programmer, or you have a programmer who has lots of time to help you make all of these sort of bespoke solutions inside Unity to actually get these basic things to work, no problem. If that's not the case, it's always a roadblock with Unity Audio that you can't do something and nobody has time to make you to make something to allow you to do that. Middleware facilitates that really, really easily. So even the simplest things like, we trigger this event in code, but I don't want the sound to start immediately. I want it to fade in and then fade out. And rather than baking that into my sample, I want to actually have the code do that. So Unity Audio can be made to do that, but it's not a sort of a quick out of the box, click a few check boxes and type in some number solutions. Whereas with Fmod and Wise, it is. So that's the functionality side. The bigger side for me, and this is where I'm getting even more heated and passionate, because it was a huge, huge problem, is workflow. When you are working in the engine where the game is living, your progress as an audio person is always limited by how far the game has gotten. So basically, if the game is in a kind of a fairly broken, messy state, you can't really do very much. Whereas with middleware, you're always able to run sort of in parallel to the development of the game itself. So regardless of how your project is running, for example, let's say you're being extremely diligent about it and you have a complete design and everything is laid out and now you're just producing the thing. In that case, if you're working in middleware, you can actually work concurrently with the rest of the team so that you can create the whole thing inside Fmod or Wise, and then when the game is ready, the programmers, all they have to do is call some events and it all hooks up and you're all good to go. On the flip side of that, if you're actually working in engine, then let's say that the game is in a complete mess and it's not working and it's broken, you can't test things, you can't implement things because there's no feature for it in the game yet. It's a mess. It's really, really, really difficult. So being able to work concurrently together with the game's development, that's one huge workflow bonus. The second workflow bonus is that in the case of Unity Audio, for instance, let's say we've gotten to the end of our process and now I want to test every sound in the game. Like I want to try mixing. And in order to mix, obviously, I need to be able to trigger any sound in the game anywhere at any time so that I can mix it. That's really hard with Unity Audio. It just takes a long time. You just constantly got to play the game, and then the game is broken because it's like 3 or 4 weeks away from Gold Master, and you know, things are coming together at the last moment, and it's not working. So you have to wait there until something is fixed. Okay, now it's fixed. Now I can test that. But wait, what did I mix that against before? And like, how loud should this be? I don't know, because I can't trigger that sound. I have to go back to level 1 to do that, and there's no debug tools for that. So I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And in the case of Fmod and Wise and any of these middleware packages, the advantage is just that it separates your work entirely from the rest of the game, so that, as I mentioned, as well as moving ahead, even if the game development has stopped, you can also basically, you have your entire audio setup right in front of you, and you can just trigger anything anywhere, and you can mix, and you can get it all nice and ready. And at the end of the day, when somebody says, "Oh, this sound isn't working," or this doesn't sound very good," no problem. You just fix it right there, right in front of you. Whereas in the case of working in Engine, if somebody says this sound doesn't sound very good, or you know, this needs to be tweaked, it could be something that you actually have no control over because it was a bespoke solution that was made for you by the programmer like 6 months ago, and they can't remember how they did it. Or let's say they've left the project, or they were a contractor and they're no longer accessible. All these kinds of workflow reasons. So I think those are the two big ones that I would bring to answer that question of like, why would you bother using middleware on a small project? Number one is the capabilities, and number two is just so much easier to be able to work independently of the game's development, and so much more efficient as well. There you go. Finished. Thank you.
That was a really great answer. It actually got me thinking a little bit about the inverse of that, because there have been a couple examples in my particular resume where we did a particularly big project without using audio middleware, and it worked. It worked out perfectly well. But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the game development process was really nice and clean, where the exploratory part happened very quickly. And then you got to a point where, we know what the game needs to be capable of. We do that. And now we're in production where designers are just making things. And I'm perfectly fine not working with a middleware, but everyone knows what everyone needs to do. And I'm just working with the designers to produce everything the way that things need to be done. So it was perfectly fine for me to work in those particular instances without a middleware. But so much of game development these days is about that exploratory process and being able to continue to work and develop the audio alongside the continuous development of everything else happening in the game is really important.
That's right. And the other thing is that when you start out a project, you have no idea if it's going to be this sort of super clean, tight, organized, design first, then produce, then polish. You don't know that that's what you're going to be getting into, especially if you're an external audio contractor. You have no idea about how organized the project is going to be. So yes, you could be very lucky, and it could be that situation that you described, Vince, where everything is already laid out before you even start, and then all you have to do is fill in the colors, essentially. However, it could be the other case where it's extremely iterative. Oh, we love that word in the game industry, don't we? Iterative. A process where, the game started off being that, but then you realize that actually that was a crap idea. And now you've kind of sort of got to reshape it as you go along. And that's a perfect situation where if you're working externally in audio middleware, you can just say, well, as long as the event names haven't changed, I'm good, guys. You go and do what you like, and I'll just be back here behind my nice middleware barrier. All the chaos is happening over there, and right here it's all organized, and that's your event, that's your RTPC. Very good. Good luck with the iteration. I'll just be here doing the sound. Don't worry about me. Everything is fine.
Woohoo.
What's interesting here is there's a little bit of a paradox in that indie developers who are more likely to benefit from the suite of capabilities that middleware, the things that middleware makes easy, as well as the stable audio development environment that middleware provides. Indie developers are more likely to benefit from that, but the investment of time to learn it, or the investment financially perhaps, may make it less accessible. Whereas, as Vince was alluding to, a bigger company that's got their MO slick and well-defined and organized can more easily incorporate middleware, and they have the time resources to develop the skill set for it, but they might not need it as much.
Yeah, there are of course a few cases where it's definitely overkill. Like if your game is extremely simple, or the audio needs are really, really basic, then sure, it could be overkill to be dropping in something like Wise, which is kind of like trying to barbecue your sausage with a flamethrower.
Yeah. And Wise is massive. Like Wise is actually, there's real. It is something real that exists in runtime. It is a thing that if you're a programmer, you need to deal with memory management. You need to deal with how much CPU is going to be allocated. Oh, wait, how much of a mix, how big of a mix am I actually handling here? So middleware is not it's not a trivial thing that you can just add in. It's definitely work for programmers to put in and incorporate into their game project.
I will just say one last thing on that point about efficiency. We found that for whatever reason, Unity Audio seems to be, in our experience, especially because we do VR games, Unity Audio is consistently worse as far as audio performance than Wise. Like there's so many cases with Unity Audio where things are bottlenecking because of audio. And if this previous project that I had, that was a danger actually. And yet I've done, I don't know, like 8 or 9 games with Wise, and not once in 8 or 9 VR games has there ever been a case where, oh boy, audio is exploding the system. We need to streamline the audio. That's never ever been a problem. So yeah, I think I'm not sure what's going on there and how that actually works on the technical side, but
I have a gut
middleware,
feeling
good.
that's because Unity Audio is based on an old version of Fmod. So right now we're on Fmod Studio 2 point something, and Unity Audio, in terms of all those core algorithms that are in there, they're actually from Fmod. What was it called before Fmod Studio? Fmod
Designer.
Fmod Designer, and that API, which is circa 2010. So maybe it's just a matter of those algorithms and those techniques that they use for mixing audio just being that much older. Maybe it's simpler, but it's not been privy to the types of efficiency, the new efficiencies, the better coding practices that have happened over the last decade or so.
Yeah, that could be it.
We have another question in the chat, and this is kind of a big one, honestly. But in terms of getting a gig. So basically, Radius is just asking, how hard is it to go from indie to AAA? And I've got to admit, I'm not sure I'm personally able to answer that question very well, because I would say all of my real work has been in the indie to maybe III, AA space. So I'm not sure if I'm the most appropriate person to answer that question.
I could say, how difficult is it? No more or less difficult than getting any gig, I think, with a like AAA versus say, III, or like a really big successful indie studio versus a AAA company. If you have a strong portfolio, excellent people skills, good business acumen, I would say that you'd probably stand the same. Oh, and of course you have access to the opportunity. I would say you probably have the same amount of chance. It's no more or less difficult from any established game company, I would say. I think that it depends, I guess, which AAA company and the specific things that they look for. I suppose, actually, we've run out of time. This was going to be one of our topics today, but Specialization could be one thing that is a difference between, say, a smaller studio and a large studio, that a larger studio, a AAA studio, may be looking for much more narrower scope of specialization, intense amount of ability in a small area, whereas a smaller indie studio are looking for more sort of generalists who can handle a whole range of different things, perhaps.
Yeah, I think
it's hard to generalize, I suppose.
Yeah, I do think that's part of the answer. I know all of my success in getting gigs has revolved around the fact that I could do a couple of things. Well, not a couple of things, but I'd say more than a handful of things pretty well. I have done some AA stuff in the past, like a decade ago, doing things for MMOs, and really it was just a matter of, hey, make a battle theme, make a battle theme, make a battle theme, and just going contract to contract that way. So I had done that sort of work in the past, and certainly that falls in line with what you're suggesting, Alex. With these really bigger projects, they want you to be able to deliver very specific assets. Can you give me that? Sure. Whereas on indie projects, they do tend to revolve around, okay, what can you provide for us? And and they usually welcome that sort of breadth that you bring to the table.
Yeah, a few. I think last year I was at a game industry meetup here in Stockholm, and there's a whole bunch of DICE people there. DICE, of course, being based in Stockholm. And I was talking to this really nice guy and said, "Oh, yeah, it's like see, I'm a 3D artist. Oh, fantastic. What kind of projects what do you do as a 3D artist?" I'm a foliage artist. I make foliage. I make the best leaves you will find in the industry. I make leaves, the best leaves you've ever seen. And my mind was slightly popped for a moment, because it's like, amazing. Of course, it makes sense that like DICE would have one person who does leaves, and not only any leaves, the best leaves in the entire game industry. And that's the person you go to for the leaves. And that's, I guess, in the AAA world, it's possible to have that level of, specialization. So as a composer or as a sound designer or an audio coder or a voice actor or any of the fields in our industry, rather than being, yes, I can do a little bit of music, I can do a little bit of sound effects, I can do some VO, I can do some middleware implementation. It might be beneficial to be able to say, I make door sounds, the best door sounds in the industry.
Yeah.
I only do F minor for my music, but I write the best music in F minor.
I am your F minor person.
Just flugelhorn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, I'm not sure that really answers the question, though.
I mean, it is kind of a tough question. I think there is a hint of an answer there. And really beyond that, I think when it comes to getting any sort of gig, it is very intensely personal. Whether you decide to broaden yourself or you decide to focus, there are going to be some specific things that you're going to have to just answer for yourself. If you decide to go on the specialist route, you need to figure out what is it that you're going to specialize in. I would say as a musician, I think there are way too many people specializing in epic trailer music, so I would highly suggest you don't do that. But there's all sorts of spaces where you could decide, hey, I'm going to specialize. Hey, I'm going to broaden my palette so that I'm able to deliver what I want to my potential clientele, whether that be indie studios or AAA. Whew. We are coming to the end of our game audio hour. It's already 2:00. We should try to finish this off as we typically do by talking about some games that we're playing. Any games that we're playing right now? Mike,
are
you playing anything at the moment?
Embarrassingly, no. I've turned to TV for a lot of my both research and entertainment purposes. I did just finish Picard, which I thought was great.
Oh, yeah. Picard. I haven't finished that yet. I should. I got to admit, I haven't been watching that much TV, and I feel bad about it because people are talking about things like, oh, Picard, oh, Tiger King, oh something. There's something going on in the TV world, whereas in the game space, it does seem like there are a couple things that haven't dropped. You've been hearing about things like Last of Us 2 getting delayed yet again. But hey, there are some things that I'm looking forward to. I am really looking forward to hitting Final Fantasy VII Remake once I get that, hopefully this week. But beyond that, I haven't been playing too many games right now. What about you, Alex?
Yep, I've been playing Half-Life Alex. As it's the, it's kind of the sort of the poster boy of VR right now. It's fantastic. It's really, really fantastic. I mean, I have no. It is probably the biggest budget, most sort of heavily. It is the AAA VR title that everybody has been waiting for. And it definitely it stands up like that. As a mini review, it's remarkable how little that they're doing that's innovative, but it's wonderful to see that the design philosophies and the things that we've come to agree on as being the best thing for VR experience, those things, they are basically just doing them very, very well rather than trying to sort of innovate in funny directions. So it's not necessarily innovative, but it's just extremely polished and extremely well done. And so, yeah, and on the audio front, excellent, really excellent. I think they must be using Valve's, because Valve has their own ambisonic solution, I think. So I think that must be what they're using, because it's very, very nice, very, very well mixed. The sound design is excellent. The music is great. Highly recommend it if you have any compatible VR devices.
Awesome. So from Alex is highly recommended. Cool.
One of the characters has an Australian accent, and so that happens to be the character that's like always talking to you. So it's very distracting for me being called Alex in an Australian accent as I play the game. It's like, Alex, are you there? Yes, I'm here. What? Where am I? Am I in Sweden?
Oh,
anyway.
Man. Hey, Chase, how are you doing? What are you playing at the moment?
Currently, I am only focused on the project at hand that I am scoring, and that is what I've been playing. But after sitting semi-quietly during watching the Westworld stuff, it made me want to hop in Detroit Become Human and wrap that one up. So I'm going to look forward to that, probably today.
Nice. Well, you better make sure that you don't that game doesn't overstay its welcome. Otherwise, it might become too human.
Not in my house. We already got Google.
All right. I kind of like that joke. I just want to throw that in there. Anyways, thank you for another great episode of Game Audio Hour. Thank you to all of our watchers, people in the live chat. Thanks for the questions. It's great to hear those questions and be able to respond to them. Fane, you mentioned Ape Out. Ape Out is excellent. I don't think we've actually called it out on the show before, but Ape Out is great if you want procedural jazz drumming solos to go along with your awesome, crazy gameplay. It's a great game to check out. So thanks for mentioning that in the chat, and highly recommended from here as well. But we have to say goodbye for this episode. We'll see you 2 weeks from now. Before then, you can go ahead and check us out on Twitter. You could like us on Facebook. If you have any questions, you could send them to us our way, or just ask them to us on the live chat when we're back here in 2 weeks. So until next time, bye.
Bye.